Today I thought about the French Revolution again, the aftermath of the king's failed escape attempt and the Champ de Mars Massacre. How the fragile balance of the revolution and the hard-fought constitutional monarchy was thrown into chaos by the king's folly. I know it sounds like a downward spiral, but let me explain. So the king tried to escape and failed, comically, and was deposited right back to Paris by the revolutionaries. Now the assembly had a new problem. They had created a constitutional monarchy in France through their revolution. And now, by the revolt of their monarch, the king, the foundation of their new republic was in danger. So, as one of their first acts, they decided to do what governments do best: lie to the people. Yep, they made up a fake narrative that the king did not flee, but rather he was abducted. But the people didn't buy it even for a second. See, whatever loyalty the monarchy had left, the king had lost it all with his hasty escape attempt, coupled with a seething letter he had left denouncing the revolution. This anti-monarchical sentiment was especially louder with certain radical groups, such as the
Cordelier.
Club. And on 17 July 1791, there was a mass gathering organized by these radical groups demanding the abolition of monarchy. In this pursuit, the people had gathered at
Champ de Mars.
demanding the king's abdication and the establishment of a republic. But this being mid-revolution France, of course, things didn't go quite exactly as planned. See, earlier in the day, two suspicious individuals were discovered hiding beneath the altar, and they were accused of trying to sneak a peek at women's ankles and also spying. And naturally, they were lynched by the crowd. Citing this disorder, Paris Mayor
Jean-Sylvain Bailly.
declared martial law. The National Guard, under the command of Lafayette, was dispatched to disperse the crowd. But upon seeing troops on the ground, some of the people started throwing stones at the troops. The guardsmen first fired a warning shot into the air and then fired into the crowd. The exact number of casualties were unknown, but the estimates range from 12 to 50. This event came to be known as the
Champ de Mars.
Massacre. The event was portrayed by both sides with their own flair. The assembly, which was majority moderates at the time, portrayed the protesters as big bad insurrectionists, while on the other side, the radicals portrayed the event as the massacre of innocent protesters by a tyrannical aristocratic government. And the radical narrative won. And as a result, the moderates lost a lot of power in the legislative assembly, and hence, the radicals, such as the Jacobins, amassed a lot of power in the legislative assembly. A little side note here, we need to talk about the invention of the guillotine, or as it later came to be known, the national razor. In the Enlightenment movement, there was a lot of push for all kinds of equality, including equality in execution. See, under the old system in France, even the method of execution was based on your social class. The nobles got executed by beheading by a sword, a relatively painless and more humane procedure when compared to hanging, drawing and quartering, and the wheel. This idea of equality in execution was mainly pushed by Dr. Joseph Guillotine in the Legislative Assembly. Dr. Joseph actually did not invent his namesake device. Rather, it was Dr. Antonio Lewis. But to the good doctor's horror, the device got his name anyway. As per some accounts, the king even ratified the design. It was King Louis XVI who suggested to use a slanted blade design instead of a curved blade so that the necks of any shape and size could be easily and smoothly. Coming back to the revolution, they remade the assembly. The French Constitution of 1791, the nation's first written constitution, was officially accepted by King Louis XVI on September 14th. It established a constitutional monarchy in which sovereignty was declared to be one, indivisible, inalienable, imperceptible, belonging to the nation. Legislative power was vested in a unicameral legislative assembly. The National Constituent Assembly dissolved itself on September 30th, 1791, and its successor convened the next day. A self-denying ordinance proposed by Maximilien Robespierre prohibited members of the Constituent Assembly from serving in the new legislature. This meant that the more moderate leaders such as Lafayette would not be able to hold a position in the new assembly, while Robespierre, who would also not be able to hold a position in the new assembly, would still de facto run it, being the leader of the most represented, loudest club, the Jacobins. The seating of this assembly was also of extreme importance. The 745 deputies of this new assembly were divided into three groups: left, right, and center. This is where we get the physical denomination of the political spectrum. Those who were committed to upholding the constitutional monarchy sat on the right side. Those who were deeply suspicious of the king and advocated for much more radical policies sat on the left. And those who were unaffiliated and chose to vote on issue by issue basis sat in the center. And hence, the political left, political right, and the center. The writings of Jean-Paul Marat continued to call for more and more violence, especially against the aristocrats he deemed to be anti-revolutionary. And fearing for their lives, the aristocrats started moving to other parts of Europe, becoming
Émigré.
The nobility in these neighboring countries started to fear that the revolutionary ideas may begin to spread, and especially the rulers in these neighboring countries started to be concerned about the conditions of monarchy in France. And so King Leopold II and King Frederick Wilhelm II of Prussia jointly issued the Declaration of
Peanuts.
The five-sentence statement declared the situation of the French king to be of common interest to all the sovereigns of Europe and threatened military intervention to restore his authority. A pro-war faction emerged in the Jacobin Club, later known as
Girondin.
the
Girondin.
championed a war against Austria, believing it would serve several revolutionary purposes. It would force King Louis XVI to prove his loyalty or expose himself as a traitor. It would rally the nation behind a revolution, and it would provide the opportunity to spread the ideas of equality and liberty across Europe. Simultaneously, King Louis XVI and the royal court secretly supported the push for war, but for counter revolutionary reasons. They anticipated a swift defeat of the disorganized French army, which they believed would lead to the collapse of the revolutionary government and the establishment of absolute monarchy by the Austrian and Prussian forces. On April 20th, 1792, upon a formal proposition by the king, the Legislative Assembly voted to declare war on the King of Hungary and Bohemia. The official justification by the Assembly was basically that Austria was hosting emigres armies and forming a concert of powers against French independence. Another reason cited was Austria's refusal to demobilize troops stationed at the French border. The declaration asserted that France was undertaking a defensive war for the maintenance of its liberty and independence and not a war of conquest. I'll get into the French Revolutionary Wars and the state of the revolution in the aftermath in the next video. That's all for the Champ de Mars Massacre and the bifurcation of the revolution. If you like the video, or if you would like to add something, or if you want to correct my pronunciation, or if you just want to say hi, do make sure to make use of the comment section. Do like, share, and subscribe. That's all for today.